walk out to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
Welcome to another edition of the 10-4 YouTube show. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jamesetta Cleveland, and joining me today is Gifty. We're going international, y'all. Baller Mom Canada,
Hi.
Donovan, and Reggie. Before we jump in and get started, I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves.
Okay, so since you started with me, I will start. My name is Gifty. I am the founder of Baller Mom Canada. I'm located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, we the North, as you can see over there, Raptors. What I do is I provide information or make refer and connections to sports moms, both soccer and basketball currently, with organizations and leagues, coaches and trainers that are looking for information to help their kids get to the next level or be better themselves. My main focus is from student athletes from the ages of 5 to 18, and just being realistic and making sure that when somebody approaches you or you're looking at something, certain things you can assess before you actually join a league. This is like mine is mainly from the early stage, not even at the high level, but you see a kid, your kid has a talent, I want to register them. What do I do? Things to look forward to so you're not derailed and spending so much money or so much time, or you're forcing the kid. So that's what I pretty much do, the realistic side of it, as much as I can, and in a positive way too, because the world has enough negativity. So I try not to focus on that. Yeah.
I'll go ahead. I'm Donovan. I'm a former athlete. At the next level, played 2 sports. I played basketball and did track. My job here is just to give my personal experience on the recruiting process, also my experience with sports, and also my opinions too.
My name is Reggie Butler. I'm a former athlete. I'm a retired former athlete. I played college basketball at Xavier University, then professionally for 10 years. And now I'm in the corporate world, but still devoting a lot of time to helping youth sports. I mentor a lot of youth who come through my camps, and also, if you want to call it mentoring, a lot of parents as well. Daily morning conversations after games, before recruiting visits. So just in a space to try to help them with navigating the process.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And we are going to dive right in. So the first question of the day, how is basketball recruiting different from other sports?
Well, I'll just start with a small perspective. Basketball recruiting, I think, from other sports are, as I've worked with a few players who my niche specifically is big men, quote unquote. So bigger or taller players. And so in those, you'll have a lot who play both football and basketball.
Okay.
And so those I had who had to make decisions whether to go football or basketball. The biggest difference seemed to be access. And in speaking access, while NCAA rules are universal, there are different rules for live periods and things. Football players tend to find college coaches, well, pre-COVID, they tended to find college coaches at their schools more, coming to see them and things, while basketball players would see them at their schools, but for actual games and things. But football coaches would seem, there's so many coaches on the staff, they would stop by, speak with counselors and just to meet with the student athlete. Basketball, you're only talking with them at the game, after the game, if they come.
Yes. I would say for here, especially during COVID, a lot of it has been focused on films and trying to see recordings of how you are and how you are during games, how you are after games. Right now, focus is on how athletes are keeping themselves healthy and active. And based on that tells you what you did before. Yes, we know you can bouncing through the ball, but how are you, being sustaining yourself, strength, mental, emotional, physical, different things. So when it comes to the recruiting, as Reg said, like for basketball, they actually need to see you live in action. And from what I know, a lot of the recruiters are not looking at just even how you handle or how many times you touch the ball. It's like what happens when you're sitting down, when you're called, like different calls, those type of behaviors are being looked at. So that's becoming part of the recruitment. For soccer, because I also work with soccer parents, it's a little different. Soccer here is very clique. You got to be a little bit in the know. And the game is longer. So the same time, it's mainly the coaches that sort of take the initiatives, or the parents have to take the initiatives, but it becomes more of who you know. When it starts off with that, it's just because anybody can kick and throw the ball. But when it becomes who you know, the recruiting sort of starts off from it, and it just becomes sort of word of mouth, because if you register with the main recruiting company, you're just a little bucket in there. So you got to be very voiceful, and they have to see you in action. That's the main key. Like they got to see you in action, which has been really hard for us here. We've been in lockdown since March, so we're going on a year. So there hasn't been any competition. There hasn't been any games, with a few trainings. So it makes it really, really hard for a recruiter to actually see you in action. So that's one of the key things when it comes to either soccer or basketball.
Okay. Donovan, you want to try?
Yeah, I think the first comment hit right on the head with the ability to be seen in football with so many recruiters on the college staff. You have about 6 or 7 college recruiters on each football staff, and you only have maybe 1 or 2 with basketball. If there's not somebody else, or the head coach can't make it, then about 2 guys only get recruited. So I wouldn't say it's going to be easier to get recruited for football, but it is a little bit harder to be seen. Like he said, a lot of people don't have access to it no more, especially with COVID going on. It's all emails and videos versus going to games and watching kids play and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Before I move us to the next question, I'm just going to. This is the third recruiting show we've done this year so far. We did soccer. I did football last week, and now doing basketball. As a football parent, like I know football is the money sport, but I didn't understand how the budget impacts recruiting. Like y this is the second sport. Like this, when I did soccer, they were very honest in that the recruiting budget for collegiate soccer is very limited, and as a result, that's why you have soccer showcases. Coaches go there because you get more bang for your buck, because there's not a lot. And so I think I just assumed that since all the rules were the same at the collegiate level, that all the recruiting was exactly the same. So this question is like, as a football parent, I'm like, whoa, like
Different.
there are like in football, when my son was being recruited, like it was nothing for his coach from the college to come and say and just stop by. I was here, I'm just stopping by, more than once. And
Mm-hmm.
so hearing you is like, oh, that with basketball, that too is another sport, where the collegiate budget is smaller, and it determines the number of people who are able to put eyes on you. And because the number of people who's able to put eyes on you is smaller, in my mind, I'm like, oh, that means that your film, your behavior on the court, it has to be really, 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 really tight, because
Yeah.
you may only get one shot. That is a very you guys are learning. I'm learning. I'm like,
Can I,
wow.
can I add a point to that? So to get specific, the sport you play also depends on it as far as when you ask what's different, because what are the measurables? For example,
Mm-hmm.
football. Football has how many skill positions? Is it 2 or 3 skill positions, they call it?
Group.
The quarterback, a receiver, um,
They have like DBs, you'll have
Well, yeah, I know
receivers.
you have different positions, but which ones are considered skill
That's what I'm saying.
positions?
They'll break them down into overall because you can have a DB, but within that, your cornerback could be really, really skilled, or your nickel could be really,
Okay.
really skilled. So they just kind of keep it broad.
Okay, great. So in saying that, football, if you think of terms, let's imagine a high school coach, a high school basketball and a high school football coach. A high school football coach can put out there on social media, I have a 6'4", 300-pound kid who can bench press 300 pounds. And that right there will start his recruiting. A
Yeah.
basketball coach can say, I have a player who averages 30 points. He's still going to get questions. How tall is he? You know, at what position does he play?
What position?
Yeah, what position? What I mean, so
Yeah.
so the mecca of each sports, you know, the mecca of a football lineman per se is, you know, 300-pound bench press. The mecca of a wide receiver is his 40-yard dash time. Well, that can jumpstart your recruiting, and it's so much easier to get recruited, even though it's not easy.
I get what
It's
you're
so
saying.
much easier to be recruited in sports that have athletic or numerical measurables, but basketball, somebody still needs to see you and find a deeper picture because your stats can be persuasive.
Yes. And also depending on how they're assessed, each recruiting team personnel have their own metrics that they use.
Absolutely.
So for instance, the person pressing, 300-pound bench, whatever, one team could say, I need that because I need it for a defensive person in my team. Another person could say, okay, that's, you can press that, but can you run to the other end of the court after you're done? Like, what's your stamina on that? So it depends on each individual team, recruiter, organization, what you're trying to fill in and what they consider to be a whole. As part of like what role you're going to play in there that you're trying to get you to join.
Okay, so this makes another conversation because we were talking about at one point on a previous show, we talked about conditioning. And I know that basketball conditioning isn't the same as football conditioning, but what you just said, okay, it's not that you can bench press 300 pounds, but you run down the court. Like, I'll click. Like, okay, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, because for me, one of the things I always tell my parents is that recruiting is a business and you are making a business decision. So this question is born out of my view of the recruiting process as a whole. Where does the business of basketball recruiting get done?
Well, most a mixture.
Yeah.
A mixture. I would probably just within the past 3 to 6 years, I would say it gets done in AAU.
Okay.
But with the emergence of now prep schools and high schools understanding what they're up against, and they're now, trying to market themselves more as a powerhouse per se. So high school wise, the business of recruiting gets done at powerful schools.
So give me an example. What does that mean?
An example of powerful school is in the Washington, D.C. area, DeMatha, Gonzaga, those schools that nationwide have had so many players who have had success at the collegiate level. Coaches go back there no matter who they have. They at least check in.
Okay.
But small school that had one player 7 years ago never gets a check-in again. So at the high school level, the business of recruiting gets done at powerful schools, unless you have a very unique player at a small school.
Yes.
Otherwise,
same
AAU, for basketball, it's AAU. And it's AAU because kind of like what you said about the soccer, coaches love AAU, even though a high school coach may cringe because of the style of play. It's a little more perception that it's a little more loosey-goosey per se, not as disciplined, but college coaches love to recruit in AAU forms because they can see everybody at one time.
Got it.
Yeah. Similar to here too, there's a big push for a lot of prep schools working hard to try to put themselves at a really good higher level or higher caliber. And majority are pretty good. They're existing high school, but they have prep basketball program in it, and that's helping also boost them and putting them on a way to say, look at us, we actually are developing great players. And one of them here, like a little bit south from where I live, is one of them that have brought out Jamal Murray. That's where he went to the school prior to going into college in the US. So there's a couple that are coming up that already have been existing, but as Reggie said, like they have to be consistent. Like, and if you're not consistently bringing up players that are going to be at a higher caliber level, 2 years from now, no one's coming back to you again. Like you have to be consistently developing and producing. Look at us. We have 3 players that came in. Some went to Europe, some went here. Like it's like you're building your resume to consistently get the recruiters come to you and look at your school, look at your program, look at your teammates and your athletes.
So let me ask you this. What's considered a prep school in the world of basketball? Because I know that you're not talking about, like, I would call it 13th grade. Like literally, there are some schools that build themselves as prep schools, and they're like from a
It's
football.
hybrid.
Yeah, like from I'll use like football as an example. So a prep school in my area is typically a private school or a school that has a college preparatory like curriculum, but it may not necessarily be football prep. But in the football world, there's like this hybrid tweener type thing, and I call it 13th grade because you're going to a school and getting some kind of classes, but you're just going because they build themselves as you need an extra year of development, or you didn't get the film that you need, so you're going to come to my school for just 1 year, and we're going to prepare you so then you can go like to a 4-year school or to a 2-year program. But from what I'm hearing you, I don't think that you guys are talking about like just a private school with a good academic curriculum or 13th grade when you say prep school.
No, no. So the school has the name as prep associated with it, but within it, they have a sports team, for instance, basketball, and they focus on that. Like it's their the bread and butter on it. So there's from here, there are specific schools dedicated. That's all. They are a private school. You can go in for science, mathematics, whatever, but the sports in there is specialized within that school itself. And then there are public school systems that also some have been accredited with the private school status that focus specifically on sports as well. So it all depends on where it is, I guess, you want to go to and how you connect with the school when you're applying with it and what the process and criteria are to get into it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
This might have needed to be its own subject because what she said is right on point. But as you have mothers on here, and if they're in the, this is really prevalent in the basketball world, pop-up prep schools that aren't really schools,
Yes.
they're people who start a team associated with a local school for online learning, and they're just playing basketball.
The front door.
Yeah. Now.
And everybody's putting the word elite under their names now. So be very cautious.
Okay.
Very cautious.
So, right, very cautious. And also, so you need to really do your research about who this person is. I will say, with this such a crazy year, I'm from the state of Michigan. They are not playing. They were just pushed back again. They might not have a season. So a senior right now who was looking for that 13th year, I don't blame them for going to look at these avenues. But overall, compared to a stable high school, some of these pop-up prep schools, not the ones that are established. There's some good ones who are established in Montbird and Lala Muir, and it's some other ones that are, that are just the cream of the cream. But I'm talking about pop-ups. A guy who says, "Oh, well, I'm not happy with my son's playing time. Let me start this team, and I'm gonna join it in with the local St. Mary's little Catholic school, and they'll educate us 1 hour a week online, and we're just playing basketball." So you have to be highly, highly aware of that. I know some kids absolutely who went down to Florida this year for prep school, and literally they didn't even pay the bills for the house they were living in, and the kids were out on the street.
Yeah. So for one thing I always say, and that's something I'm also preparing myself with, is if these pop-ups come in, it's like going for a job interview. I need to know and do reference checks, double check, for somebody who was a former athlete that, you're good because you made it, you weren't, and now it's your business. It doesn't equate that you understand how to do the recruiting, right? You can't just go on based on what you sort of experience, but you need to provide proof. So for me, I always say it starts back to when you first started even looking for clubs to join. How do you decide which club to go to? You do tryouts, right? Did you decide to join this team versus that team? So that process and the comfortability where your kid falls in should carry throughout in terms of when the recruitment and getting to college comes in. And making sure that these pop-ups coming in, they look fancy. Some of them are really good with marketing. They have very nice logos. It's very nice. But I always go to the back end. What's your resume? What is your proof? Where is your experience? And it's some people are maybe legit and they just need an extra foot in, but you have to vet it so you don't fall into the situation where you're driving all the way to Florida and you're living in a home that's not paid for, and you're thinking, where's my dream? What's going on, right? So for me as a parent, that is my checklist. Like, provide the proof, who you are, and I think a lot of parents also need to realize that you can literally call, like for us here, even in Canada, you can check with the NCAA, make sure that they're registered, they're accredited, they're valid. Like, it's not just something temporary, that they are aware of them. So that when you're going to these prep up one, the courses that you take, it's going to be accepted. You're not just taking math and science from somebody from their basement, thinking that's going to get you in to get your right SAT points or anything like that. It has to be with the right path. So always check. They come in, they tell you, okay, I'm going to call, the NCAA. Are they associated with this particular field? Are they associated with this association? Where is that? Because those are money associated with them to sign up and get the certification. And it's not an easy thing to just get it. Right? So if you do that vetting in advance, and you can say, okay, then I understand what you're providing for me is valid before you take that step. Because this is all money. Unless you're $100 million rich, you just want to throw it out as it is. I always say just vet it. Always, always vet it. And when you have that gut feeling, it's not right, go with that instinct.
So the business of basketball, I'm hearing it gets done mixture of places, but one of the places is AU, and the other place like is prep school, but not just prep school as I know it, but like literally I'm gonna start my own team. We're gonna go online and call ourselves a school. That is very all righty
There's
then.
valid ones there.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
But just being cautious of the, like Reggie said, the all of a sudden coming up right away, just startups. And there's nothing wrong with startups, but vet it that they have the right footing. Yeah.
See, things that you learn. Donovan, do you want to add? Do you want to add anything?
No, I pretty much said everything. Like I said, you want to be aware of those pop-ups. I've seen it firsthand. I had a cousin that played basketball coming straight out of high school to do an extra year before getting college recruiting, and it was down in Georgia. And it was literally a pop-up. It was somebody doing online classes, had like 7 to 8 kids staying in one house, and there's really no funding. They was borrowing gyms to practice in. They was going to tournaments that were just like thrown together. If they say they're a prep school, do your research. Like we said on the podcast before about the college tournament, the prep school tournaments. You just want to make sure who's going there, what it's like, and is it legit for sure.
Yeah. Especially for us here and for Canadians, many have to travel to come to the US to compete. So it's not something you can just get up, grab your bag and go. Whether you're flying or driving a couple of hours. Michigan is close to us here. So depending on how deep in Michigan it is, you could be driving just 20 minutes or a full 2-3 hours. You go in there. If it's a weekend tournament, you're staying there for the weekend, hotels, like all of that, you have to factor in. but you have to do that vetting prior to it, right?
Got
Yeah.
it. That's like the wildest. Who knew
It
that?
is, and I mean, and it attracts kids. I mean, I know some kids from Michigan who've gone to prep schools there in Canada. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean,
Orange prep.
it's yeah, exactly, yes. So,
And that's a valid, legit, and they've actually worked really hard to make sure that their reputation is still respected and everything, right? It's not in a random thing that you know how to play and you just come in and go. It's a very well run program. There's a couple here that's been existing for a while. But like I said, as Reggie also said, there are some that may be popping up because rules and regulations may come, which is good because it opens up the field for other people to start a company. But just be cautious. That's all.
So, okay, I'm gonna move this because I will sit here with this. This actually probably needs to be a show because I'm just blown. Like y'all go across like international. People would leave, go from one country to another to go to a prep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have to. Like I got questions. I got so many questions, but in the interest of time, because I want y'all to like me enough to come back,